Hello and welcome back to the County Chat channel. We are continuing on with our County Championship previews for 2026. We've started with last place finishes in 2025 in Division 2 all the way through, and we're going to get to the winners from 2025. So we've got all the way up to Division 1 and we've got to Sussex Cricket. That's the county in which I've grown up in. I live in Sussex still now, where I play my cricket myself. So of course there's obviously an actual personal element to it. I'm often worried about with previews talking about Sussex too much, or this preview often being longer or more detailed because it's just a team I'm a fan of. But this winter I didn't have to worry about that because Sussex have been the kind of main headline of county cricket news over the winter. If you don't know, quick headline, we'll get into the team review a bit more, but they've been bailed out by the ECB. A lot of things going on with their finances, kind of consistent mismanagement for a long time by the board, and a lots of things going on and not much of it good. Something I've started realising as I do this County Chat channel and look into counties a lot for these previews, you kind of don't have much written about you as a county championship side unless something's going really badly wrong. I think he's like Gloucestershire, you can think of in recent times, Sussex obviously in recent times, especially the smaller counties, I guess is what I'm referring to, because there's obviously the bigger counties where they host test matches and whatever like that. But for a small county like Sussex, or a smaller county like Sussex, yeah, it's not going well if you're reading a lot of BBC Sport articles, all the major newspapers, and you're like, don't usually get this much attention. And the reason is because Sussex have finances have run straight into the ground. Anyway, we'll get into that in the sort of team review. There's lots to cover for Sussex, so without further ado, we'll get into the leadership group. Is the first thing we usually cover here. It stayed as the same head coach. He's been doing a lot of the talking on behalf of Sussex, bless him. It's Paul Farbrace. He's had to really face up to the media. Unfortunately, I would assume he was about as much in the dark of it as all the players were, and most people were, for example. So he's had to take a lot of the bare brunt of it, and all power to him. He's handled it with grace and real dignity, because at the end of the day, he's one of the people who the Sussex have been paying, and basically there's a point at which they're not actually 100% sure if they'll be able to pay everyone. I mean, there's no guarantees, which, I mean, it's just an absolutely mental place to be in as a sports club, but also as a business, just any business. That's a terrible place to be in. They've remained John Simpson in a captaincy role. He's remained the club captain, but there is a change in captain for this year, which I think is a surprise one, bearing in mind Sussex got promoted last year with John Simpson as captain. The year before that, as John Simpson captain. Then in their first year in Division 1, John Simpson got them to finish fourth. They were in the kind of mid-table, like they were the top of three teams that all finished on 172 points. But again, not really a position where you'd usually change captain. John Simpson has also just come off the back of two back-to-back 1,000-run seasons. A lot of things that would be surprising, and you wouldn't suggest to change anything. But Ollie Robinson, the sort of ex-England bowler, I mean, it's hard to say ex. He's banging down the door about wanting to get back into the England side. But anyway, he, at the stage of his career, has asked for the captaincy, and Sussex have given it to him. Him and Paul Farbrace obviously have quite a special relationship in him being a stepfather and things like that. And so whether or not that has anything to do with it, I don't know. Ollie Robinson was very open and honest, so admitting that he had asked for the captaincy, and I think in his last contract review or whatever it is. And yeah, Sussex have given it to him. As I say, it'll be an interesting one. It's certainly a risk, I would say, but with Sussex's management of the last 5 or 6 years, risks have become kind of part and parcel of the whole managing Sussex. That is me referring to the finances side of it. But Ollie Robinson as a captain, I mean, there was a lot of character discussions around him when he sort of left the England setup. So again, an interesting decision to see how he'll do at leading a side. Obviously, there's the usual thing and a usual apathy around bowlers and fast bowlers being captains, and that, again, seeing if Ollie Robinson sort of fits against or with that stereotype, it will be interesting to see. But it's a big change and a big season for Sussex. It's a really big change to change who your captain is. Of course, John Simpson will still be around the team, and I'm sure he'll take a lot of burden, but it's just an interesting sort of figurehead decision that Sussex have made. Anyway, that's the leadership group and the changes that have happened. Moving on to the overseas signings, despite the bailout and all of the finances around that and how they're basically claiming they might not pay everyone. The ECB have allowed Sussex to kind of keep their overseas. That was something I was actually struggling to find, but then it was actually one of these BBC Sport articles I'm referring to, which actually just explicitly said that. But yeah, Jedev Yunadkat, who played for Sussex last year and maybe the year before that as well, but he's been very, very good in the county championship seasons whenever he's come over. But he's playing all the way from April through to July, which is a great bolster for Sussex. He's an incredibly good left-arm seamer who's taken a lot of wickets in red ball cricket. And I get the impression that he just likes being able to come over and play county cricket, and I can understand that as a red ball specialist from India. You want to play in the best competitions, I'm sure, and the county championship division 1 is a great competition, if you ask me. So anyway, Yunadkat in from April through to July, and then another one is Dan Hughes, and this is a cool one in a way because Dan Hughes actually got dropped from his New South Wales red ball career in essence, having had a really pretty serviceable good year for Sussex as an overseas, and then he's come back and doing another season as overseas. So he's just had a winter where he was effectively playing grade cricket in Australia. I think he was doing quite well. His Instagram feed, it comes up in my feed sometimes, and I think they might have won their grand final. I'm not actually sure on that, but anyway, Dan Hughes is there for the whole summer. Again, confirmed in by the fact that they're basically Sussex can do it and can afford it despite all the financial issues we're talking about. And now speaking of signing players and signings going through for Sussex, they also signed 4 players this winter. They signed Danny Briggs from Warwickshire, ex-Sussex man, Jack Leaning from Kent, Dom Goodman from Gloucestershire, and Tom Price also from Gloucestershire. So a couple of seam bowlers from Gloucestershire and Goodman and Price, and then a spin bowler in Danny Briggs coming back, and then Jack Leaning from Kent, who's a sort of a batter who's a good one to have in and around the team, I would say. Then for outs, they released 5 players, Sussex. So there was some signs that there was a bit of financial mismanagement maybe was in the fact that they had to release these 5 players. So Ari Cavalis, Bertie Foreman, Archie Lenham, Zach Lyon Catchett, and Henry Rogers. Now, I'd say everyone barring Ari Cavalis falls into the category of young cricketer who Sussex effectively had to just go against and in essence have to let them go. I think a lot of them, I'd say Bertie, Archie, I'd say all 4 of them you could probably see on a staff somewhere, but unfortunately I don't think any of them have signed anywhere else. At least I haven't found that. I know Bert signed for a minor county and a few other guys. I know Henry Rogers is playing at Loughborough, UCCE. So it's an interesting one where Sussex had to drop a lot of young players, and that is the nature of the game, and also the supply and demand of county cricket, right? If there's not actually a demand for what you're bringing, whether it be a spin bowler, opening batter, wicketkeeper batter, then you're all of a sudden not going to get a contract. People aren't, people aren't just giving out contracts just for the sake of it, sort of thing, I guess is what I'm getting at. Anyway, moving on to the sort of squad list. Batters, you've got John Simpson, Tom Haines, Tom Alsop, Jack Leaning, Ollie Carter, Harrison Ward, Charlie Tear. For bowlers, you've got Ollie Robinson, Jedev Yunadkat, Danny Briggs, Jofra Archer, to throw him in the squad. I don't know how much he'll play. Jack Carson, Sean Hunt, Henry Crocombe, Dom Goodman, Brad Curry, Troy Henry, Nance Oosterhuizen. And then for all rounders, you've got James Coles, Finn Hudson-Prentice, Danny Lamb, Tom Price, Tom Clark, and Dan Ibrahim. Now, we'll move on to the team review. And as you can imagine, for Sussex, this is probably the longest team review I've written for any of them. But as I sort of said at the top of the show, I'm always slightly worried as a Sussex fan that I'll kind of bring up Sussex when they don't need to be brought up because, at the end of the day, I'm a Sussex fan. It's hard not to talk about the county you actually support when you're talking about county cricket in general. I think this year of all years, it's been actually hard to find a county cricket story not about Sussex in the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks. Of course, it has been. I'm being slightly facetious there, but Sussex have been a massive part of the kind of county cricket lexicon because I think at the end of the day, they are a real lightning rod issue to prove maybe a wider issue in county cricket and the finances around it and how county cricket is being run, if you ask me. So I think Sussex have kind of hit their failures and their mismanagement is all a big part of that. And to give a kind of brief thing, because I've already done like a video on it, but we've had more stuff come out since then, for those unaware, Sussex have had to take a bailout package from the ECB. They're having suffered an operating loss of 1.6 million in 2025 and continued predictive losses going forward, including £1 million sort of pitfall this summer and this financial year. The framework will mean that ill signings will be looked over by the ECB into the future, up until 2029. Paul Farbrace in various things he's had to admit that even currently contracted players and staff are like can't be 100% on their future, and I'm sure the ECB will make sure that this is sorted out. And there's so much money that has been poured into the ECB, you'd think that they'd be able to do this, but I think Paul Farbrace had to admit that there isn't like 100% certainty on that. In essence, yeah, the county's finances have been totally mismanaged, you know, and I think it to an extent of which the finances have been mismanaged so poorly that there has to be a level of which you decide there's been an absence of care, must be assumed. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't take a genius to know if you spend what cash that you don't have, eventually the cash will run out. And that is exactly what's happened for Sussex. They signed heavily. They've paid heavy wages for big overseas, you know, players like Steve Smith. You know, he was looking for any county, and many counties were. Steve Smith wanted to play county cricket the summer he came over, and he was asking around lots of counties before Sussex, I think it would be safe to say. And that's probably because he was asking for a lot of money, and also in a summer where England were playing an Ashes series against Australia. Sussex were the county to give him that deal, and it didn't pay off for Sussex because he scored no runs. It didn't pay off for Sussex because no one really came and watched massively, and it didn't pay off for Sussex in the obvious sense of they spent probably lots and lots of money on him. And I can't say for sure how much they spent on him. I'm not going to pretend I know that. But I think that sort of kind of the Steve Smith signing is a bit of an encapsulation of the lack of duty of care and the lack of forward thinking that came into Sussex's finances. And I think that's what has left, you know, people frustrated and angry as Sussex fans is stuff like that and decisions like that. If you look back on it and just give it a second thought, you go, that's really stupid. And they were spending money effectively thinking, you know, we'll spend money on a player like Steve Smith and we'll fill out Hove. It's almost like that was the kind of the financial planning. It's like if we fill out Hove and we sell all these concessions and we sell Steve Smith shirts, that might just about pay it back. And that's almost the logic it felt like was being used. To move away from that just specific example, but it was reported by Paul Farbrace that players were left angry and disappointed by these findings. I mean, I'm sure he did a bit of political language for his players there, because I mean, angry and disappointed is probably what I feel, and my livelihood hasn't been called into question, and the kind of general framework in which I trusted hasn't been pulled apart. So I'm sure that some of these cricketers in 10, 15 years' time will have plenty to say about all of it, and whether or not, you know, that will come out, it would be interesting to see, I guess. But Sussex, as a part of this same framework, have also accepted a 12-point deduction in the county championship, which is basically a point deduction equivalent to half a win, roughly. They've also had to take a point deduction in various short form competitions, so like a 1-point deduction in the One Day Cup and the T20 Blast, which again equivalates to about half a win in those competitions. I think also the Sussex players, I think, were also quoted as saying, or you know, reported as from Paul Farbrace as saying the points deduction they found very frustrating, which again I can understand, because it's not their fault, it's not Paul Farbrace's fault, it's the fault of players, people who have nothing to do with how the playing actually goes at Sussex. And I think that kind of lack of accountability is another thing which would really frustrate Sussex players, quite frankly, I'm sure. I think, you know, and I mentioned this earlier, I think Sussex's financial problems are synonymous with a kind of larger problem with county cricket, and in a more existential way for especially smaller counties, that basically, you know, there is not enough money coming in to keep these counties sustainable. And if you don't have big ECB funding, and if you don't get good membership and good people coming to watch your games of cricket, the end result is that you're not going to have the money to pay professional athletes. And at the end of the day, the contracts are dear. They are hard to get people on, and overseas contracts can get, you know, out of control very quickly. So again, I'm not trying not to get lost in like a longer video, because again, I've mentioned this in the few, but I am working on a video at the moment which is going to kind of be talking about that and my views on it in a wider sense. But I think what this shows is Sussex is almost a perfect countification, not personification, of larger financial issues within the ECB. Now, in a blatant sort of short-term sense, Sussex cricket have been consistently mismanaged over many years, and the consequences are now becoming apparent. You know, I think if you were a real cricket fan in Sussex, you may have noticed certain things. So whether it be the Steve Smith signing, whether it be the not being able to re-sign players like Luke Wells, Ben Brown, whether it be the dropping of all these young cricketers this winter, there was a lot of signs. And I think, again, if you're really dripping into the weeds of Sussex cricket, you know, a lot more sort of systemic signs, and I won't get into that, but if you, again, I think people who are around Sussex cricket might know what I'm talking about. And again, the sort of the consequences of these financial mismanagement and problems are now totally apparent, and it's a tough moment for the county and a bit of an embarrassing moment for the county. Or I say, take the bit out, it's an embarrassing moment for the county. Now, usually the team review stuff is all about the cricket from last year. So now getting onto the sort of playing side of it for 2026. It, of course, firstly starts as a sort of uphill battle for 2026, beginning half a win behind the rest of the competition. And at the end of the day, like, the county championship was incredibly close last year, and like Hampshire got brought into a relegation battle because of an 8-point deduction. So again, you transpose that to a 12-point deduction, and I know Sussex stayed up by quite a long way last year. But you kind of start thinking, well, that kind of fine margin could have a big difference come the end of the season. Also, in 2025, to make the obvious point, Sussex had a really, really good year. I mean, getting promoted and finishing up in fourth is excellent. They beat some good sides. They did well at home. They didn't lose a lot, and they beat who they needed to beat, for a simple way of looking at it. All of that being said, that was all done with the captaincy of John Simpson, and they've gone and changed the face and the voice for the captaincy. They've gone to Ollie Robinson to succeed someone who's been so popular and so successful in John Simpson. And effectively, the reason being, by the sounds of it, is that Ollie Robinson was like, I'm not playing for England. I'm at a stage of my career I want to be doing stuff more than just playing county cricket. And he was like, can I be the captain? And they were like, yeah, sure. Now, again, that's probably an oversimplification of it. But again, it's a bit of a weird decision-making process when you've just had John Simpson be probably your most successful captain, I don't know, probably since the county championship winning signs, and then all of a sudden in 2 years, you've got Ollie Robinson, who, again, I can't comment on the kind of character things that have come at Ollie Robinson, but he has had over quite a long period of time character, not assassinations, but character attacks, let's say. So again, him becoming the county championship captain just feels like a strange one, if for lack of a better phrase, maybe. John Simpson will remain the club captain, but I don't know, to my memory and my knowledge of county cricket, club captains are kind of almost an honorary role, it feels like, in some senses. And if he'll have a lot of impact and he'll be able to captain a lot still, then maybe that would be great. And I'm sure if Ollie Robinson does get injured or can't play, then John Simpson will be just the captain, full stop. But yeah, as I sort of said at the top of the show with the tongue in cheek, but them Sussex in the season where basically them taking massive risks with finances, all falling apart. In that same season for the playing team, they make a massive risk with the leadership group. I just couldn't help but see the kind of funny parallels there of, like, Sussex have just got used to taking risks, I guess. It will be interesting to see how the risk of Ollie Robinson as captain will go, because he has also admitted, like a lot of fast bowlers who go on to be professional cricketers, he hasn't captained since being a pre-teen. I mean, and now he's 32. He's also hell-bent on re-entering the England Test team at this point. I mean, like, all of the articles I've seen about Ollie Robinson and in essence about him being the captain of Sussex is him talking about him, having to smash down the door and take 60 wickets and all of these things that are going to get him back to being a Test match player. Now, of course, I'm sure Ollie Robinson will be able to do the two and be able to, prove to England why he should be a player whilst also being a captain. But you can see how there's a slight conflict of interest there. If he's looking to try and get for 55, 60 wickets, is he going to make the right decision on when to take himself off? Or do you see what I mean? Maybe it's the last wicket of a game, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's that. If you're trying to chase numbers to get yourself back into an England side, is that the best place for you to be positioned, is being the captain of that team? I don't know. Maybe that's me being the pessimistic Sussex fan here. But again, it's a tricky one to look past in some senses, And, he's really wanting to get back into the England team. That you can tell that is his priority. And the fact that he isn't in the England team frustrates him. And all of those things feel like distractions from Sussex's county championship campaign. At the end of the day, Sussex have all the talent and ability to be a Division 1 county, and it would be a disastrous moment if they were to be relegated after some brilliant seasons, basically since COVID. Because around COVID was when a lot of the Luke Wells and Ben Brown, around then, that was when they left. Sussex were languishing in Division 2 for a while, and under John Simpson and Paul Farbrace, they've been dragged out of that. So again, it's a real big moment for the county, and that can't be understated. Now, also, I just thought it was a cool thing I saw, and that a friend of mine said to me, Paul Farbrace just spraying Brendan McCullum for having no interest in the county game. Although I absolutely love it, and I'm glad someone's talking about it, and someone in the county game and someone as well respected as Paul Farbrace is talking about it, because it is so blatantly obvious, and someone who is a county head coach just being like, no, everything you guys may have thought is entirely true. He doesn't care. He doesn't send anyone messages. He doesn't really look. Now, whilst it's really admirable, and I'm so glad he has done it, it does feel like a pretty bold strategy, given he's kind of Brendan McCullum's going to become the ECB's golden goose, and Sussex have just been bailed out by the ECB, and Paul Farbrace is going, just absolutely spraying McCullum for not coming to any county games and not really caring about any county games. It's not maybe playing the game of niceness on Sussex's behalf maybe that well, but I guess Paul Farbrace would see it as much more like they are two separate things, which they are. But again, I think as a Sussex fan and just in my brain being in a slightly worried state for Sussex, it's hard not to make the connection of like, maybe don't say that about Brendan McCullum. But again, what are they going to do? They're not going to like change the terms of the loan, are they? So I'm being paranoid in a sense, but it's a funny situation to be in. Anyway, that's the team review, and I'm already noticing we're flying past on time because there's lots to talk about. So the standout player from 2025, I've gone for James Coles. Had a brilliant year with the bat, passed 1,000 runs. He also took, I don't know how many wickets it was. I think it's near enough 30 wickets. Had probably the best all-rounder season out of anyone in the County Championship Division 1, unless I'm forgetting someone, but I think he did. And he's absolutely brilliant. I mean, he's just fetched himself a massive contract for the London Spirit. Funny to think that, James Coles' personal finances could be able to bail out Sussex. That's a bad position to be in as a club when one of your players is basically a better financial state than you are. James Coles, I could talk about him for longer, but if you know anything about your county cricket, and if you don't, make sure you watch some of James Coles batting. He's a beautiful batter, classical technique, can be aggressive and bowl some really excellent left arm spin, and especially in white ball cricket, that left arm spin is really, really impressive. But his stats at red ball cricket for his left arm spin is also very, very good. He is one of the most talented cricketers in England, if you ask me. I don't see it being too long till he gets into some England squads, and he has clearly been a bit of a, they're touting him to be one of those players. He's been in the England Lions Shaheen series against a Pakistani team, and just sort of being the best player by quite a long way, if you ask me, just looking at those scorecards. James Coles is the business. He is as good as he could be in a way. I don't know, he's like 22. He already averages in the high 30s with the bat, and his bowling average is only ever going down. I'm a big fan of his, needless to say, as a Sussex fan, but I think you would just have to watch him to know that it's not hyperbole from a Sussex fan. I just said hyperbole from a Sussex fan, but it's just kind of, if you watch him enough of him, you'll start becoming a James Coles truther, if you will. I also shout out to John Simpson. I've did a whole lot about him in the team review, but both in the captaincy point of view, he also had an 1,000-run season, captaining a newly promoted team to fourth place. He could get stand-up player very, very easily. It's just James Coles had a ridiculous year. Now, for potential star performer, this was one I was actually really, really struggling with, because I think Sussex have quite a few options effectively in a potential star performer. A couple of people I thought of was like Tom Clark, because he's kind of always been flattering to deceive. He's not quite had his big year yet, and he scored a big 100 at Warwickshire in the first round last year, and everyone was like, oh, this could be it. And then he proceeded to average 20 for the whole season. And then I also thought of Tom Alsop, again, similarly, didn't have a brilliant year last year, but has got a lot of talent. But I haven't gone with either of them. I also thought Ollie Carter, because Ollie Carter is someone who I think if either Tom Clark or Tom Alsop got dropped, Ollie Carter would be the person to go in. I played against Ollie growing up a lot. He's talent-wise was absolutely brilliant, and he's been brilliant for Sussex whenever he's been able to play. He was actually the person I thought was most harshly done to when John Simpson joined, because he's a wicketkeeper batter, but he's a good enough batter that he could bat in your top 5 as just a batter, and I really hope he kind of does in a way, and not that I hope that Alsop and Clark don't do well, but I just see he is good enough, and I don't think he should just drop out of Sussex's team slowly. I really hope he gets some good opportunities. Anyway, this is a lot of chat for a lot of people I haven't given potential star performer to, and I have gone for a bit of Homer bias. A Durham University lad I know, Tom Price, I've gone for. He's just signed for Sussex this year. He's an incredibly talented bowler. He's struggled with injuries a lot, and I think I'm basically doing this because if he stays fit, the cricketer that he is so perfect for Sussex at the moment. And, if Sussex have Ollie Robinson, Yanadkat, Hudson Prentice and Tom Price, it just covers almost every base. It feels like Pricey's a bit of a hybrid Ollie Robinson, Finn Hudson Prentice, like more of a seam bowler, but again at that sort of 78 to sort of 75 to 80 mile an hour range. Incredibly skillful, a really good batter. he's had a really great career at Gloucestershire. I mean, he already did an unthinkable thing and taking a hat trick and scoring 100 in one day, which was sort of in first class cricket unprecedented. Tom Price, Pricey, big fan of his, great lad, but he's also just an incredibly good cricketer, and I'm really hoping for his sake he can stay fit throughout this whole season and get a really, really good year in Division 1, because he's more than good enough to do it, and it'll be interesting to see, or I hope for his sake he'll be able to have a full season effectively and do that. Right, getting into some screen sharing, we'll run through the statistics quite quickly, as I am wary that I've been moaning a lot about English cricket and Sussex cricket, so I've been chatting too much, and we're running over time a bit. Anyway, here we are. John Simpson, 1,000 runs at an average of 60. I mean, again, when I say he could have been a first stand-up performer, I was not underestimating it. He had a ridiculously good season, was a big part of the reason, Sussex won any games really throughout any of the season. It was his runs often were in those games that we won. James Coles, 1,032 runs, average of 47. Again, if it was just his batting alone, it would be a close run thing between him and Simpson. Obviously, Simpson would have probably just done him, but just skip ahead to the bowling. James Coles, 30 wickets, so 20 wickets at an average of 33, but bowling, quite a lot of overs at a low economy. He's just an excellent cricketer. Dan Ibrahim, in the games he played, again, scored 121. I think it was up in Chesterley Street. Very defensive knock, but yeah, he's always had an incredible amount of talent, Ibrahim. It's just whether or not he'll get the chances. The opening pair of Haynes and Hughes, I mean, averaging in the mid-30s. I think both of them would actually probably expect higher than that on the averages, and that's just down to how good they are. But at the end of the day, couple of probably the two of the best opening pair, or sorry, the pair of them are one of the best opening pairs in county cricket, if you ask me, and I see them both having better years this year. Tom Alsop, as I mentioned, a down year from him. I think out of him and Clark, something's got to give in a sense. They're both averaging in the mid to low 20s, and they've both been big parts of the Sussex setup in the last few years. I think this year, if either of them have a bad year, I'd see them getting dropped for maybe quite a long period of time. Now, the real strength of Sussex is that lower order batting. So Finn Hunt's apprentice, as you see there, 488 runs, average of 24. And then you've got Jack Carson, 454 runs at an average of 23.89. I like to think that they've got to have a bit of an unspoken competition maybe about run getting each year, because they both bat about 7 or 8 or 8 or 9, and they're often very close. And they're both very good batters. Carson getting his first 100 last year as well. Now, moving on to the bowling, Sean Hunt is someone, again, if he can stay fit, he's a really, really impressive left-arm seamer. I think he took a lot of those wickets against Somerset last year, if my memory serves. Jadav Yanagka, as I mentioned, he has produced for Sussex every time he's played for Sussex. An average of 16 wickets is a great go. McAndrew, he's bopped off to Glamorgan, I think, this year, but he's had a couple of good years at Sussex, doing really, really well. Ollie Robb, obviously, only played 10 matches, took 39 wickets at an average 24. If you transpose that to a 14-match season, that is about 50 wickets, if not more than 50 wickets. And I think he could realistically get to 60. My question marks over him being a captain has got nothing to do with bowling. His bowling, I've always said, I think he's easily one of England's best bowlers, and he should be in the Test match team, if notwithstanding them wanting him in the team, I guess, is basically the issue. Hudson Prentice, 27 wickets at an average of 27, an excellent fast bowling all-rounder. Really good player to have, and just gets the job done really, really effectively. Crocombe, again, someone who just improves year on year, is absolutely rapid, always has been, but he will be looking to have a bigger year and basically be able to play more, really. Then you go down a bit further, we got Colsey here, 20 wickets at an average of 33, really, really good year. And then you got Cast down here. It's one of those where I think the numbers don't do him justice, in a sense. Like, I think he would be disappointed with these numbers. But again, as I was mentioning about the Hampshire preview, like, there were a lot of decks which were pretty flat. And at the end of the day, if you're a spinner, you'll end up bowling a lot of the time when there's not much doing for the seam bowlers. And again, your average just gets pushed up. So again, I think Carson would be expecting a bigger year this year. But his bowling as a spin bowler, I rate very highly. As I mentioned at the time the Ashes squads were happening, I don't see why he shouldn't have been around that. But for other things which aren't really to do with him. Now, getting onto some screen sharing, or not some more screen sharing even, and having a look at Sussex's predicted first day lineup. Now, I'll do as I have been whenever I've been doing a bit of a shock pick. The predicted finish is 9th for Sussex. And now that obviously, as a Sussex fan, is not something I'm wanting to happen. It's maybe something I'm more expecting to happen, or expecting is the wrong word. Okay, let me rephrase. I think Sussex have a lot more likelihood to go down than a lot of the other counties. Now, a part of that, of course, is the points deduction. A part of that, of course, is the Ollie Robinson as captain part of it. The other part of it, of course, is like, players, when there's a financial uncertainty to their career, might start looking elsewhere. They might start looking over their shoulders. These people are, these cricketers are all human at the end of the day. They're all going to be thinking, where's the next contract coming from, and all of these sort of things, and as they should. And I guess with all of this stuff wrapped up in one, and they seem very galvanized and they seem very committed to this season, and I really, really hope Sussex do well. I saw Ollie Robinson talking about it like, imagine if we won silverware after having the start of the year that we had. Imagine if we did this, that, and the other. And of course, as a Sussex fan, I want to imagine all of these things as well. I want to believe in that truth. But I think there's a part of me being a bit more analytical and a bit more cold and a bit more just out of it. Is a part of me is like, well, they have got a points deduction. It was very close in the mid-table last year. They've got better, but they haven't got like a lot better. And also, there's all this financial unsuredness. A lot of people confused and angry, and as they should be. So I just think it's more of a predicted finish based off the fact of all of that uncertainty. I guess something I've often said when I'm doing these predictions is that if I feel like there's a lot of ifs to a season, I often feel like I want to predict them lower. And you can't get much more if than Sussex this summer. As I say in their team review, Sussex are more than good enough to stay up, and their team standard-wise is way beyond that. But I just think there's a part of me that worries about that element, and I worries about that. I guess the team staying together in a sustainable way, and someone like Ollie Robinson captaining them very well, because captaincy in 4-day cricket, in my opinion, is incredibly important. So the kind of whimsical change of captaincy is also, got my back up. I don't know, and maybe it's also just frustration at Sussex as a cricket county rather than it is this team that also hurts. I don't really know, but I think there's a lot of logic to the reasons why you might see them getting relegated. I think a lot of the teams around them have got a lot better, and a lot of the teams they finished above last year, I think I see as being better, full stop. And also then you add in a points deduction. Without further ado, I've talked about the predicted finish plenty there, but I just thought for Sussex fans, the elephant in the room had to be looked at. Opening pair of Dan Hughes, Tom Haines. As I mentioned earlier, I see this as one of the best opening pairs in county cricket, full stop. Excellent left-handers. They seem to bat really well together and sort of suit each other's games quite well. The only issue I think they have is that they're quite similar. They're both left-handed. They're both pretty similar stature, and they both score in similar areas. That would be the only kind of drawback. But for watching them play, it's very aesthetically pleasing, and they're two incredibly talented cricketers. Now, Tom Clark, as I mentioned earlier, him and Tom Alsop. You only realise how many Toms there are in the top 5 when they're all next to each other. Tom Haines, Tom Clark, Tom Alsop. But anyway, Tom Clark and Tom Alsop both averaged in the 20s last year. So someone like Ollie Carter, some of the other batters in the squad, they'll be looking at those performances. And I think if they do badly to begin the year, you might see stuff like players like Ollie Carter coming in a bit more. And there just being a bit of a reshuffle in the game. But I think that's another reason. The batting depth I do struggle with. I think Hughes, Haynes, Cole, Simpson, incredibly good batters. Players like Alsop and Clark, and then their replacements, there is a big drop-off in my view. Anyway, James Coles, I've talked about. I just hope he doesn't get dragged into an England side for Sussex's sake, because he's that good. And I think him having another brilliant year will be a large part in Sussex being able to stay up and having a good year. Alsop, I've kind of mentioned in that Clark bit there. Simpson, again, similarly. I really hope he can just continue on his batting. But the reality is he has just had 2 back-to-back 1,000-run years. It's like, are we expecting John Simpson till the end of his career will just keep scoring 1,000 runs? Maybe he will. I mean, I again, when I'm predicting them 9th, it's not because I want that as a Sussex fan. So I really hope this is the case. But I'm just saying these are all the parts that come into it. John Simpson, I think, is nearing his late 30s. Hudson Prentice, as I mentioned, really good all-rounder to have in your team. I'm a big fan of his. And yeah, I see him having another good year. Cast, the same. Again, they can sort of be interchangeable at 7 and 8. I think Carson actually started batting above Hudson Prentice last year. But again, 7 and 8, those two being, roughly the same. Tom Price, 9. Again, he could bat all the way up to 7. He's a batter of that calibre. this sort of third bowler or fourth bowler, if you will, if you're going to say Hudson Prentice is the third bowler, I think is the one which will change the most. Like Sean Hunt, Dom Goodman, and Danny Lamb, I'm sure will all get goes sort of in that place. Robinson and Yanadkat, whilst they're here, they won't change because they are a sort of cut above those other seam bowlers, if you ask me. Both world class, both got a lot to give. Ollie Robinson, at the end of the day, I think the question marks are all around him just being the captain. That's the only thing I have, and that's nothing to do with his bowling abilities, because I still think he's the best bowler in England, quite frankly. And then, yeah, as you see here, there's two young bowlers and Danny Lamb, and then Danny Briggs. A good signing this year. I was actually just unsure if he's actually on a Red Bull contract. As always, never specified anywhere, so it can be really, really hard to find out basically if he's going to play Red Bull cricket. Anyway, I think it's already run well over the 30 minutes, but you can understand why. There's a lot to talk about. It's also my home county, so I guess I've probably got more to say anyway. But Sussex is in a really, really interesting position going into 2026, and it will be interesting to see how their season plays out. I hope it doesn't go as pessimistically and badly as I'm predicting. I guess I'm just, I don't know. I guess I would look at it as maybe I'm just being realistic, and maybe I'm just seeing the kind of writing on the walls. And if you think of sporting sides in general, when the money runs out, if you think of across all sports, generally doesn't go very, very well. I know this Sussex team seem very galvanised now, but again, if you lose your first 3 games, how galvanised are you going to be then? And I guess that's the worry for me. I really hope I'm incorrect, and I really don't want Sussex to go down, needless to say, but it's a worry I have. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you check out all the other previews, as all of them have come out to this stage. We've only got 3 more now. We've got Somerset, we've got Nottinghamshire, and we've got Surrey. Not in that order. Somerset, Surrey, Nottinghamshire. But we're getting to the end of the preview, so make sure you're checking out all the other ones. If there's any, second county you support, or maybe you just want to know about another county a bit more, make sure to check out on YouTube. There'll be some playlist links here. If you're on Spotify or you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure to just check out the rest of the series. They're all in a season, in episodes, so make sure you can check them all out there. Leave a like, leave a subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Thank you so much for watching. If you've had a great day, I hope you had a great day. If you're about to have a day, I hope it is a great day. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very, very soon.